Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here, post-election, and I've got Steve Orlando with me. I only say it's post-election just to give you a time reference, although some of the things that we talk about may seem like they're inspired by the election results, but really, when you think about it, some of these conversations have been going on for weeks, in the case of, say, Chelsea Kane and the brushback she got for the Mockingbird 8 cover. Ask me about my female agenda. Really? That's a big point of contention. And honestly, there's been a response from certain people on the right that I guess now are being labeled as the alternative right. And literally Breitbart.com, Steve Bannon, who was Donald Trump's kind of chief campaign strategist, was the leader of Breitbart.com until becoming part of the election, and frankly has been attacking comics and I think a lot of publishers' attempts to be more inclusive for several years now. Attacks on Bendis's Miles Morales and Riri Williams, and Jane Foster as Thor. A lot of these things, and really all you have to do is Google search Breitbart and Marvel Comics, and you're going to see a lot of article titles where I think, again, it seems like the alt-right feels like they're being attacked by an agenda. The only agenda I see is that, the publishers are responding to the audience saying, hey, we want to see more representation. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And Steve Orlando is a great example of that in his work. Steve, I thought that Steve was a gay gentleman. He's a bisexual gentleman, and he writes an excellent Midnighter and Apollo series currently for DC. He's also currently writing Supergirl for DC, and starting in the new year, will be writing Justice League of America, and we talk about his lineup for that. Primarily, we're here to talk about Namesake, his new book from Boom Studios, that features a gay lead, a fireman, and I love the fact that it's I love the fact that it's a fireman as the protagonist, as we talk about in the discussion. But a guy that is going to back to an alternate dimension and an alternate world to bury his two fathers, the remains of his two fathers. Really interesting stuff. And again, I think it's unexplored territory in comics to have that kind of protagonist, that kind of father and son relationship. And, I think it just opens up new storyline possibilities. And it's great to talk to Steve about that and about Supergirl and about Midnighter and Apollo and his plans for the Justice League. But also just this weird kind of discussion that is going on. And again, I don't think it represents the majority of either Trump's supporters or certainly not the comic book community that isn't of color and that isn't women. And I guess I'm saying that I certainly don't think it's the majority opinion of a lot of white males. And we just talk about how the comic community responds to these requests by its readers to have more representation, the pushback that we're hearing about from the alternate right, lots of things in this conversation with Steve Orlando. Primarily, though, and I'm proud to say, about the comics themselves. They're damn good comics. Steve's a good writer. And I'm really glad that he was willing to talk about some of these things. Because, again, they were just on my mind. And we really planned this interview well before the election outcome. So this really isn't in response to the coming Trump presidency. It really is just about what's been going on in comics and pop culture, I guess, as I shrugged, saying since Gamergate. So interesting to get Steve's point of view, and I'm glad we had this discussion on today's Word Balloon. It's all brought to you by InStock Trades at InStockTrades.com. There are great books waiting for you right now at InStock Trades. Man, I am really glad that this omnibus is coming out. One of my favorite Marvel black and white magazines of the 70s, The Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. Well, they're now releasing them in omnibus, and they have Shang-Chi stories, there are Sons of the Tiger stories, Iron Fist is in there, great writing, great art, guys like Rudy Nebres, George Perez, Jim Starlin, Paul Galassi, really Doug Munch, just tremendous stuff. They give you a Gabriel Del Otto cover, And this book is 50% off at InStockTrades.com, only $62.50. You can also get the Civil War II Choosing Sides trade paperback. Lots of great stories in there and various writers and artists. That is 42% off, just $11.59. You can get The Massive from Brian Wood, the library hardcover, Volume 2, Brian Wood and Gary Brown. It is 42% off, just $23.19. There's Rocket Raccoon and Groot from Nick Kocher and Mike Walsh, picking up where Scotty Young left off. And very great stuff in there, 42% off, $9.27. And let's see, what else can we give love to? How about the Unbelievable Gwenpool trade paperback, Volume 1? Chris Hastings and Danilo Beyruth. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And this is a great trade paperback, 42% off, $9.85. Some of the fun stuff at InStockTrades.com. Plenty more. All you got to do is look up your favorite artist or your favorite writer, and you're going to find great books at great prices from InStockTrades.com. Word Balloon is also brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for your continued support via Patreon. Word Balloon is free, but if you want to help the cause, and I've got a couple more new subscribers this week, thank you very much, and welcome aboard. If you can spare $1 a month, $3 a month, $5 a month, the price of a comic book, or even just $1, it certainly is appreciated. It helps me get to conventions and meet new creators and make new contacts and bring you the results and even bring you some panels when we're on the road and moderating panels right here on Word Balloon and keep the conversation going and expanding. And, I love my regulars, my go-to guys, and I'm glad that go-to list is expanding with new relationships, and you've gotten results like that this month and last month. And thank you, League of Word Balloon listeners, for your support. If you go to wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad, it will take you to our Patreon page. Can you hear the ambulance in the background? I'm in my apartment, and an ambulance just drove by. I hope everybody's okay. But if you click onto the Patreon page, it'll show you there how to subscribe to Word Balloon. Thank you very much, League of Word Balloon listeners. You really do help keep this podcast going. And I'm very happy to present to you conversations like the one we're about to have with Steve Orlando. One last thing, and because again, as I'm recording this, I over the weekend, and probably in response to some of the election results, a lot of creators are doing some really interesting things. They are letting it be known that when they make money at conventions, they're going to be giving to some progressive charities. There are some, other creators out there that have already kind of let it be known that they would like to see the conventions donate to some progressive charities, to some of the causes that people feel like might be in jeopardy because of this change in administration and possible direction for this new Trump administration that's coming. There are a couple creators who have kind of made it known that they don't want to go to conventions in states where Trump won. And I don't think, again, this is my own 2 cents, I don't think that's a good idea because I go to a lot of different states that are both designated red and blue, and I've been in some very red states that have, even as a state itself, made some very controversial choices. And all I can say is I've met with conventioneers that are not reflective of the majority voting of a state or a specific county. And I really think that I hope these creators think about that choice and don't deny the fans that they have, fans of color, fans of different orientation in those states that, really do like comics. And, I mean, really, Steve and I get into it in the conversation as well. And I mean this, and maybe this is going to sound like white guy mansplaining, but I don't know. All I know is for, like, the 99% of us at conventions, we're all just happy to be there. There's a connection because we all like the same stuff. And there's a communal, you're all welcome to the club feeling. It's something that I've always genuinely believed in. And honestly, again, anecdotally, I can only say that it's something that I've seen, even in these states that, don't have my favorite people in the Senate or voted, in a different way than I did as far as the majority. That doesn't mean that there are. I mean, the likelihood is those people aren't coming to the conventions. If anything, they're protesting the convention, like we see sometimes in San Diego. And guess what? That's literally a handful of people compared to literally the hundreds of thousands that come to these conventions and give it right back to them and say, no, sorry, we like this stuff. There's nothing wrong with liking this stuff, and shame on you. So I hope that spirit and those creators will think about it, and maybe they will in the months to come. Regardless, enough talking on my part. I want to get to our conversation with Steve Orlando. I really enjoyed it. I hope you will as well. Here it is now.
Steve Orlando, welcome to Word Balloon. Long time meaning to have you on, so it's a pleasure to finally get you on.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to finally pop in.
Congratulations on Namesake from Boom. I think it's a really great first issue. And as I was telling you before we started recording, being an old musical theater fan, I immediately saw the Brigadoon similarity. At least that's where my mind went when we're talking about. Well, you explain it, because it's kind of an alternate universe that only pops up syncing to Earth's universe occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, so Brigadoon is very apt. I mean, so far there's not a ton of plaid in the book, but otherwise it is, but the book's not over, so stay tuned. But it's something I've been toying around with for a long time, and the impetus of the book, in some way, it comes from two different places. One of which has been revealed publicly before, and one of which hasn't. The first one is that, I've been talking to Eric Harburn at Boom since my book Undertow came out, which is like 4 years ago now.
Okay.
And we were just looking for the right thing to do, and we couldn't find the exact right project, and we spent years and years like working over these pitches and fine-tuning them and running them up the flagpole. And then, as with most things in media, they all got rejected. But one night, in the middle of the night, I had this idea of this guy that was carrying around these two urns over his back, like Django, classic Franco Nero Django. Mm-hmm. And this sort of fantasy landscape, and I just text Harburn like giant urns, and he gets excited, and it started with this image of this guy, this Django character, who was walking the primal Wild West with these urns over his back, and they slowly morphed into what you see in the book, these sort of Ebola like weapons that Jacob has turned them into. And the other impetus that people don't know comes from late night text editors. Back in the day, one of the guys I owe my career in comics to, Will Dennis, when he was at Vertigo, we were also trying to get something off the ground. And we're both like upstate New York guys, so we have a very similar sense of humor. Cool. And I had, I had just gone into the office earlier in the day when DC was still in New York, and fired off a bunch of pitches. And as usual, Will, with the loving but caustic knowledge that he has, was like, well, these are all terrible. Which I respect, by the way. Like, I'm a no bullshit type guy. So as I returned to my friend's apartment in Williamsburg, and we're like knocking a couple back, I text Bill Dennis, and I'm like, Rip Van Winkle 2, Rip's pissed.
Was that a pitch?
Idea, which I think was like Starship Potemkin instead of Battleship Potemkin. But for whatever reason, he was like, what about that Rip Van Winkle book? Like a month later. And I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me here. But the point is that book was also, this was where the idea of the Brigadoon stuff came in, because the whole idea was that Rip Van Winkle hadn't been asleep for however long, 50 years. He had actually been brainwashed for 50 years by people from another dimension, this fairy dimension at the time, and so Rip did not come to pass for whatever reason. It could be that it was the book about Rip Van Winkle taking vengeance on aliens, and was supposed to be kind of like hipster Rambo, but for whatever reason it didn't.
Go on.
Yeah, but the idea stuck in my mind. Like, yeah, do I want to take revenge, or do I want to make charcuterie? I don't know. But anyway, it stuck in my mind. So when we were building the world around Jordan Molasses and Namesake, is where those things kind of came together, because it's 2016 and we need to push past what people expect. So we can't just do Western with urns. especially with my backlog of things like Undertow, which had a lot of world building. We have to go a little further and push it a little more. So we brought together this two worlds aspects and this long history that takes place long before the book starts, and as I've talked about, long after the book ends. This is a lived-in world that we're stepping into for a moment, and combine it with that imagery that I first talked to Eric about, and then brought Jacob in to really give life to.
Very cool. It's first of all, Jacob is the protagonist's name, right? Jake, right?
Jacob is the artist. Jordan is the protagonist.
Jordan, excuse me. Okay, because now I was confusing Jacob and Jordan. Jordan, I love the idea, first of all, that he's a fireman. And I don't think we use that enough, I'm not being a writer, I shouldn't say we, but I don't think that's used enough in comics, because I really do think it's a great place to start as far as, just a good job for a hero to have, a heroic person to have. It's cool to open up with that. But more importantly, too, this is a father-son story of a different kind. And it's really great to see this kind of story from the perspective of gay characters. And I think that's really cool.
It's a father's son story, yes.
Indeed. And do you want to go into that? It's in the first issue, but,
Well, I think it's all about, there's something I try to do in all my work. And you're right, we haven't seen Fireman a lot. As you said that, I was trying to rack my brain. And obviously there's Ash.
Yeah, that's it, really. And also J.T. Kroll, when he did his future Superman from that Batman Beyond era, when he decides to have a new Earth identity, he becomes a fireman.
I did not know that, but that's a good idea. So, I like the idea. It's a highly respectable job, and it's one that requires an immense amount of work and toughness. And so it's all just like finding places that we can give people a little bit of what they expect and things that they don't, that make them look at things in a different way. And that goes for Jordan's job. Like every tough guy in a book doesn't have to be a washed up MMA fighter or a cop to be tough.
Right. And willing to step into the unknown, as a fireman needs to do with every emergency.
No, exactly. So, and then it goes as well for the type of things that draw us into these revenge stories. A lot of books I've done are revenge stories, and I think it's because it's primal and it's universal. Yes, in this case, Jordan is avenging the death of his parents, and his parents are two men, but it's much like my book Virgil, which was also a revenge book set in a very different place. There are things that I hope through the medium of, in my case, a lot of violence, bring people together, which is perhaps a contradictory thought, but again, it's fiction. And it's this idea that you might look at this book and say, well, I can't relate to Jordan's life at all. He's got, he never knew his parents, and he had two dads and all these things. But when you boil right down to it, it's something very primal. He wants to take care of his parents, lest or west. In Virgil, it was, I have to protect the thing I love. And these are things that everybody does. The things that are hanging on that narrative certainly change. But my hope is when we pick these things up, and it's speak to why Jordan has two dads. You pick these things up, you get an amazing, hopefully creative and intriguing action story that you never forget. And then you come away, hopefully, in addition to being titillated and excited, with this understanding that really the core of who we are is closer to other people than we think, even if we don't think we could ever relate to a person who doesn't look like us or live like us. The things that really drive us are very similar. So sure. That's the peaceful heart behind most of my work, which conversely ends up being usually quite violent.
Well, you do violent as well. No, I think this is a great start. I think there's almost a Tron feeling in a good way, and I hope I'm a fan of Tron, so I say that as a compliment in terms of going into this alien environment as he does search for. I mean, are both dads dead, or is he searching for one of the dads? that might still be alive.
Well, he certainly has got to bury, he's got to bury both of them.
Okay, the urns represent both of them. Excuse me. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they should both be in there, right? Like, you don't want to, much like Christmas, you don't want to open the presents too early, or things could go wrong, perhaps. But they should both be in there if it's all going to plan. So, of course, we'll see if it goes to plan.
I see. Okay, because I wasn't sure. I was reading the letter from the father. I assumed it was a father he didn't know.
Well, both of them, yeah. I mean, you'll find out a little more, but this is it's a giant. It's numerous rugs being pulled out from him at one time. He thought he was abandoned by his parents, and now he finds out that why he was, but now he finds that there was a reason behind it, and on top of that, just as he finds out that they were around, well, now they're gone. So there's a lot of hopefully there's a lot of whiplash, which sort of drives his character as acting very impulsively as the story goes on. You can see he just sort of does things in a very sort of Heath Ledger Joker way, but that's because he's so rudderless with the sort of napalming of his old life that happens in issue 1.
Got it. Okay. Is this a limited series or is this an ongoing?
It is. It's a 4-issue miniseries. But having said that, this is one moment in this world, and I would gladly come back. And I would gladly work with Jacob again. I am DC exclusive, which is important to say because this is my only creator-owned book for 2016. I hope to continue to be able to do them with the exclusive, but I wanted to make sure that in addition to doing all of this superhero stuff, we had some original content as well, which is important to me because it's totally different. The working style is totally different. So I think hopefully one feeds the other, and the books keep getting better and better, but we'll see.
Well, I would imagine it is because you're in a connected universe, obviously, with DC. So this I would assume is more freeing in terms of you're able to come up with your own ideas, and it's really just the two of you as far as like what goes and what doesn't go in this world.
It's more freeing, but you're also more naked and out there as well. Like, let me say, because you're building the foundation, right? And like when you're working on a work for hire property, you're either polishing one of the bricks or you're putting new bricks in this mansion, but the mansion is 75, 20, 30, 40 years old, depending.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it's a totally different thing, and there's different rules. And honestly, and as a creator, continuity is also an interesting thing because it is a huge challenge to do your initial world building in a creator-owned book. The secret of comic creators is everyone thinks we have a plan, but a lot of it is kind of just like backdating Revelations because there's so many things that we can pick out and reference when a book has been around for 75 years. And you say, oh, well, yeah, oh, man, they've been planning this since 1931. Well, yes, of course we have. I wasn't even alive, but I've been planning something since 1963. There's different. There's no safety net, but at the same time, there's no ceiling either on creator-owned stuff. So like I said, I think playing in different sort of creative styles, it just makes all the work better, and it flexes different muscles. So I'm excited to be able to be doing both.
How is because with gay protagonists, is it out in terms of are you and forgive me if this is an insensitive way of asking this. Does the community know? Oh, it's a Steve Orlando book. Okay, cool. Namesake isn't out yet, correct?
Namesake, it landed today.
Oh, okay, excuse me. All right, fine, because Mel sent me the advance, and actually, because he sent me the advance, I stuck up on my Midnighter and Supergirl today. So I didn't look for Namesake because I already had it in hand. You've established yourself with other characters, certainly with Midnighter and Apollo currently and stuff. Is this like is there already a gay fandom that it's like, oh, awesome, I want to grab this?
Yeah, I'm sure there is, and it's it's a tricky subject to respond to me being a gay writer because the truth is a lot of media doesn't actually, and this is going to sound like I'm shading you, and I'm not, so I apologize.
No, like I said, I felt like I'm asking it in an awkward way. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm from Syracuse. Nothing is awkward. But a lot of media doesn't actually do research. So I mean, it's funny because I've spent the 10 years since I came out stumbling for bisexuality, and then I do Midnighter, and you'd be shocked how many people have decided that I'm the openly gay writer of Midnighter. And the thing about it is, there's obviously nothing wrong with being gay, but it's interesting the assumptions people make. You know, I'd like to be identified correctly, since there's a ton of erasure within and tension against bisexual people from all sides.
Understood.
And this is not what you asked about, but it's just funny because people assume, you know, they always make a lot of assumptions about creators of a book. And I understand where it comes from, because they want representation and they want authenticity behind the book. And, you know, I've been out for 10 years, but it's just interesting to me because I was once on a press junket, and I spoke about this very thing in relation to my book, Virgil, and then someone who was at the press junket 2.5 hours later did it to me after I had a whole story about it. So it's just fascinating to me how people make these jumps. But the point is, it doesn't matter how you identify. Like, it is all valid and worthwhile. And I hope those people feel safe coming to my work and feel that I'm doing a service by them. I certainly am working all the time to serve as many communities as possible. And as I said as well before we switched over, like, I hope it crosses over into other communities. You know, these are books that are supposed to show us at the end of the day that we're more alike than we are different, despite what we might think. So I hope anyone feels safe picking up my books, and that's the real answer. I'm sure there's a lot of crossover from Midnighter. I mean, a book with a queer lead that punches people in the face, wearing a black leather jacket is certainly has connective tissue to a book with a queer lead that punches people in the face with a yellow leather jacket. So,
well, I appreciate the action. I think you do action quite well. And I do think you are obviously serving more than one community than several communities, because, you know, I've read your 3 issues of Supergirl as well. And I think, you know, I think it's fantastic, man. And we'll get, you know, if we have time, I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about Supergirl. But well,
I appreciate it. And the only thing I'd say about Supergirl right now is that, like, it's exciting for me when people come and say that they found the character again after a long time. But the most exciting thing to me, I don't say the most exciting. Another extremely exciting thing to me is when people say they've never really, despite the fact that super characters are always sort of positioned as outsiders and immigrant stories, is when people from underrepresented communities, you know, communities of color, things like that, say that they finally have sort of felt a connection to the character. Because, you know, the fact is that despite being an alien, Kara could certainly pass, and not only that, she could pass as a white blonde woman. So, you know, I've tried to put things into her experience that you know, speak to that of people who are coming to a new place, a new country, or a new world, or a new job, or any of those things, and sort of break down the boundaries of what she looks like. And it seems to have happened, so that's very exciting for me.
Yeah, and I love that, and I wanted to get to that in terms of your depiction of Kara, that you gave her an accent. And I love that. Or, you know, at least that's how people are obviously whispering about her at school and stuff. And I thought that was great, and I don't think that's ever been done before. So that was really a great wrinkle to go from, like you said, that white. You know, my favorite quote is from Dan Slott. I'm sure he's not the only person to say it. Any Silver Age book, if you've got characters on a bus going into an underpass or a tunnel or something, and the scene goes black and all you've got is word balloons, you'd have no idea who is speaking, because they all pretty much were these, like, white, blonde, or brunette, you know, Anglo,
well, we know who
characters.
Was speaking.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So, it was Roy Thomas.
Well, at least, or Denny O'Neil, possibly, or, you know, exactly. But yeah, I mean, but no, that's what's really cool, and I think it is great conveying the immigrant experience in that way to this blonde-eyed, blue-eyed, blonde-haired girl.
Well, and I appreciate it. I will give credit where it's due. I'm not the first person to talk about a Kryptonian accent. I'm the first person maybe to do it the way I have, with the fact that she doesn't use contractions, and the fact that there is. I mean, I did create a whole, like, sort of semi-invented language for when they speak Kryptonian in the book. But the first person I remember, James Robinson, when he was on either Action or Superman with Renato Guedes, he had Monel on there, and he had people saying that a Kryptonian accent sounded kind of like an English accent, which obviously was somewhat self-referential since James is English. but I liked that note. Obviously, we developed it a lot more. It always kind of freaked me out, or not freaked me out, but I felt like there could be more to do with the fact that largely when characters spoke Kryptonian in DC Comics, it was just English with a different alphabet. So we moved on from that as well. And yeah, I mean, it's a thing that easily shows you that, you know, people are from around here, and we hear it all the time. So it's exciting. It's working. We're going to keep sort of developing that and some other things with Kara, which will hopefully continue to build her experience. I'm always really happy we can get things like that, things like her, you know, her sort of like list of foods she tries with her parents, because having lived out of the country for a while, like, food is one of the best ways to get to know a new culture. So,
sure, absolutely.
There'll be many food notes coming in Supergirl. Don't worry. People who read Midnighter and thought there aren't enough random shots of food in Supergirl yet, it's coming. Don't worry.
That's great. And I mean, also your interpretation of the character fits well, obviously, into the TV show, but not slavingly so. You know, it's good to see kind of this beginning and interaction with her parents and with her friends. I mean, you know, that's the strength of Superman, Spider-Man, and the Flash and everything. Is not just the hero, but the characters that surround, you know, the hero as well. And they've done a good job of it on the television show. But I think I mean, you're really getting into the Danvers, and certainly in this initial story with the Cyborg Superman represented by Zor-El and really all of Argo City. I loved. I'm glad you mentioned James's involvement with Superman, because really that whole New Krypton story, it's weird how it's remembered. I hung on every issue. I thought it was a great idea. I think it's really that whole counterculture thing of the hero experiencing what they do on Earth, and certainly Kryptonians in particular, and the life they left behind. In Superman's case in New Krypton, he really only knew the Kryptonian life almost from like a photograph and postcard kind of sort of way, whereas Kara, because of when she left Argo City, like she says in your book and everything, I mean, it feels like it was yesterday. And to have this kind of counter culture and resistance to these characters, but also when they seem to know who she is, that's great conflict, man. I think you're really doing a great job with it.
No, thank you. I mean, I appreciate that it's connecting. I mean, to me, having Zor-El Cyborg Superman is like a huge opportunity, because it makes him, you know, and as we see the story go on, like, you know, he's only doing what so many parents say. Of course, it's filtered through the fact that he's been turned into a killer robot, but he's given up so much. And to me, like so many of the things in books, I crib from my own life. You know, like there's a line similar to Zor-El's motivation. You know, in I think issue 6 of Midnighter, when Matt's father just says, "Well, I don't really care about other people. Just keep my son safe." You know, it's selfish. But so many parents, you know, I think, including my own, have said things like that in the past. You know, like, we don't care what other parents do. Like, you know, we care what we do. And at the end of the day, they feel their obligation is to put their kids first. And so I think that makes Zor-El hopefully very sympathetic, because he's only doing, you know, what he thinks is best. He's only trying to make his daughter happy, which, like, what other obligation do parents have? But he's failed so many times, and he's so far down the rabbit hole of mistakes that, you know, this is what he's got right now, and what he's got is a killer robot plan. You know, because he's this is where he's at, and this is where desperation has led him. So hopefully it continues to grow in a way people like. I really feel that the emotions behind it are very, very primal, and again, universal. You know, what father wouldn't do anything to protect their daughter? What person wouldn't do anything to save the rest of their race? And these are questions that he wrestles with, and they're things that we think about. So At the same time, when does the coin flip between parents knowing what's best for their kids and kids knowing what's best for themselves?
Sure.
So I think that there's a lot of that at play there, and it will come to a head, as most things do in comics, with large things blowing up. But hopefully there continue to be things underneath.
That's excellent, man. And Allura as well. I mean, the mother is there. I mean, and also, the kids probably need, or at least, I mean, she certainly has feelings for her adopted parents and doesn't want harm to come from them. But by the same token, that she misses her old life, and I think there is part of that also. I mean, if they are really in there, in these robot bodies and everything, maybe there is a way to connect with them. I think it's great because I mean, as someone who's lost their parents and stuff, I mean, I kind of felt that kind of, oh God, to be able to speak to them, even if they were killer robots, it would really be kind of cool. So, and I love that part of the New Krypton story back when James and Rucka and those guys were doing it during that reign of the Supermen, as opposed to the reign of the Cyborg Supermen that you're currently doing. I like it. I think it's definitely a different story, but I can appreciate a lot of the basic human emotions that are in play here. And I think it's great, man. I think you're on the money with this. And again, I think it's nice to see a warm Supergirl again, because that was something I wasn't, not to dwell on negative things, but just that notion that came with the New 52, that both Superboy and Supergirl were kind of adversarial towards Superman, and it's like, no, man, these are like family. I mean, they're literally the only family these people have. I mean, you can be angry and disagree with them, but at the end of the day, this is still your family.
Well, I mean, that's actually a good segue to what we were talking about with Namesake as well, because
Please.
A lot of the core of that book is this concept of exactly what you said, like the lengths you go to accept and the things you do with the justification of, oh, well, it's family. Like how many crazy things do we do because it's family that we wouldn't do for anyone else? And Namesake is a lot about that, honestly. And again, of course, writ large over this fantasy landscape with big iron balls hitting people in the face. But it's really all about this concept. Like you find yourself making compromises and making choices when it comes to your family that we maybe would never make in any other situation. I find that really interesting.
I would agree. And also, again, I see the father-son thing even in these two issues of Apollo and Midnighter. I wasn't reading your Apollo or your Midnighter solo book, but reading the two issues and stuff. It's great to see Midnighter go to his father, and we get some information in issue 2 about where Apollo is and the tough deal that Midnighter's about to face.
Oh well, you got to read Midnighter, man. I killed someone with a stake in issue 1, so you're missing out.
Well, I mean, honestly, I never read The Authority. It's one of those blind spots in the 90s or early 2000s when the others have written that excellent series, and I know it's great. I never got to it, and I like the ideas that start with the basic ciphers of heroes and the ability to change them because of the kind of people that they are. I mean, Midnighter and Batman have a lot of similarities to them. I loved. Was it in your book while you were doing Midnighter? Didn't I see Nightwing and Midnighter kind of?
Oh yeah, we had a 2-issue crossover. There's a fight in a steam bath, which people enjoyed. While they're in Russia, which is that issue is probably the most Slavic thing. At that point, it was the most Slavic thing I'd written in my life. I lived in Russia for 6 months. And when that came out, that had the most kisses blown to Russia. But I since went back and did something in American Vampire Anthology with my collaborator from Undertow, Artyom, who lives in Russia still. That is currently the most Slavic thing I've ever written. But I enjoy doing stuff. I enjoy doing stuff. I mean, there's a weird sort of like melancholic, romantic ennui to a lot of Russian literature that I find very appealing. So it was nice to send Grayson and Midnighter there to blow it up, which is kind of what they do,
Very, very Eastern Promises moment.
Yeah, well, you don't actually see the bits because it's okay, but it is certainly inspired by a scene in Eastern Promises that I have bookmarked on YouTube. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. So, did you work directly with King and Seeley when they were doing Grayson? When was it during Grayson, or was it a Nightwing with Seeley at that point?
No, it was during Grayson.
Yeah.
We talk a lot. I mean, Tom and Tim and I are pretty close. And we have a similar sense of humor. So they set the table for Midnighter with his appearances in Grayson. I mean, we definitely shot things back and forth, but they're also very, very accommodating and very generous dudes. So once it's basically as much as can I take Grayson to Russia? Is there anything I can't do? And which is often very little when it comes to Tim and Tom, and then we just make it as fun as possible,
Sure, definitely. Are these really and including Namesake as well? Are there markets? And I guess I got to ask because certainly from the outcome of the election, and it really seems like there's we're really dealing with a divided country right now. Are there parts of the country where you've had trouble getting Midnighter and Apollo out there, or even Namesake right now with Boom? I mean, has it been an issue in terms of getting it into stores in certain cities where the social mores may not be as on the same page as say Chicago or something like that?
Well, maybe there are. And the honest answer is I don't know. But if there are, what I would say is that some books. I mean that saddens me. But
Sure.
At the same time. Not all comics are for everyone. The important thing is that these comics exist for the people that they are there for.
Absolutely.
I mean, yes. I mean, in a perfect world, everybody reads Midnighter or Namesake and realizes that punching people in the throat can bring us all together. But if they don't, and as much as that saddens me, the bigger thing is that these books will continue to exist, and they must exist to serve what is a large base of readers that are hungry for stories where they can be the hero,
Yes.
and that's what they're there for. I hope as many people read it as possible. I will say that I've had people buy Midnighter in States when I do signings that, man, I thought that I should maybe not put it on the table, but I did, and it went well, so you never know. I think I wouldn't forecast the election as a referendum on queer comics. I think that there's a lot more going on there, and maybe people's priorities are different than mine or different than some people's. But I don't think that it's as exclusionary. I hope that it's not as exclusionary as some people are saying it could be.
Well, and I'm glad that publishers are responding to those requests of the readers that they want to see more representation in comics. And I mean, do you think it's getting better? Because I ask feminists this question as well, and I really, as dumb white guy who just wants to read a good story and everything, it seems like the publishers are listening and we're getting more product. And I'm never saying that the battle is over or that there can never be enough. But I mean, it does seem like the publishers are responding, and clearly in Boom's case, and I think in DC's case, they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Well, yeah, I mean, things are better, but as you said yourself, there's always a lot more to do, and there's always going to be more to do until it's not a big deal.
Yep.
That these things are happening. Because in the grand scheme, when you go outside your apartment, comics should look like what you see out there, and I don't think we're there yet. But I think that steps have been taken, and the market is changing. How people consume comics is changing. We're sort of living in the uncanny valley of that right now. People. Monthlies and weeklies and Wednesday Warriors are extremely important to the vitality of a book, especially a creator-owned book that sort of lives and dies on those. If the creators want to be able to eat, but at the same time, the people sometimes don't feel totally comfortable going into comic stores, depending on who they are, and how people consume those books is changing. Whether they're using like DCBS subscriptions so they can get them at home, or obviously digital, or they come they're consuming in collected editions. I think the readership is actually growing, but how they consume is changing. And so, we're in the process now of seeing that the industry has to adapt to that. And we're taking steps, but many steps more has to be taken because you're always balancing the fact that we have to meet these new demands. But, especially in the case of creator-owned books, we need to eat, we need to survive. So it's all about finding the way to get all those things done. And I don't necessarily have the answer for that, other than we're going to keep trying things, and hopefully something we'll keep the things that work. We'll keep the things that work, and we'll move on to the things that don't.
Sure. No, absolutely, man. Was there anything that you want to put in Namesake that Boom's like, yeah, too far?
No, I mean, so it's a creator-owned book, so in theory, nothing other than the fact that, we did agree on the rating, so that's the only thing, and the same, so what I mean by that is, it is a PG book, and, because this is America, that means that we can have exploding heads and hands getting bitten apart, but we can't have nudity or people saying shit.
Yep.
And, I can work within. I'm happy to work within those bounds because that's what we agreed on when we conceived the book.
Sure.
But within that, no. I mean, of course not. I mean, we're partners in it and telling the best story possible. So there's very little boundaries besides the ones we agreed upon in doing a PG book.
Understood. Okay. How about in Midnighter and Apollo?
I would say the same applies. In Midnighter, we were bound, and Midnighter Apollo were bound by the same rules of any other T+ book. I mean, we can show as much or as little, depending on your own views, sex as you could in Green Arrow or Nightwing or something like that.
Sure.
And there's no double standard, at least that I've encountered. We can do as much as they could. That said, we can't do more. We are the biggest struggle on Midnighter is the fact that all the artists that I work with are European and definitely don't understand why we can't show more asses. But we keep trying.
That's universal. I can appreciate.
But no, I mean they've been super supportive, and I felt like that is important. It's funny you're talking about people, the people that just won't buy this book. Well, maybe. But there's large parts of the community that don't know that gay men can have sex facing each other. So hopefully people picked up Midnight Apollo 1 and found out that was possible.
Indeed.
And if so, I've done my job.
There you go, man.
I can drop the mic and leave comics. I'm out. So.
No, honestly, I think the intimate scenes are done very tastefully, and I think, again, as dumb hetero white guy, but yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think it's great. I'm glad that we're at a point where the publishers are cool with that, and I'm glad, and I think the readership deserves to see, literally an adult, male relationship. I mean, that's fine. That's awesome.
Well, it's we're getting there, and that's how you change people's minds. Honestly, is by showing them that these things are possible and that they're real people.
Yeah.
Of course, it's comics, so they're not real people, but they act like real people. I mean, everybody says, it doesn't matter what the star of the comic is, but if it's any type of underrepresented group, there's a large proportion of. There's a school of thought that says, it's obviously harder to be, it's harder to be it's harder to hold on to any type of prejudice once you've actually met someone from that group and you can put a real face on it. It's not impossible, but it's harder. The neighborhood that has no people of color in it, and then they move in and they're shocked to find out that they're actual people, and they're and that obviously, of course, they should know that, but we're facing a reality right now that maybe they don't. But the fact is once there's a face on those things, I think it's harder to hold on to those prejudices. And that's what comics can do in some way too,
No
because
question.
you show people that whatever they may think, that these communities can move beyond stereotypes. And I wish in my heart that we weren't still at that point, but if we are, I think this is how we move past it, is by putting a human face in these things and showing, again, a commonality and experience that we all have.
I agree, and I do think that comics have been taking these baby steps in the right direction, and it almost was, as you say, they're not real people, but I really do think too that that's been one of the great things of the last 15 years is really this effort to get beyond the two dimensions of the comic book hero portrayal and really make them more human. You know, you had social relevance in the 70s, a bit of it in the 80s, but it really, I really don't think until we got to this decompression period and beyond, where it was like, hey, let's have them talk to each other as people and really get to know these characters beyond the ciphers and beyond the capes and masks and stuff. And I really think that had to really kind of push through. And there was resistance even to that, and saying, we don't want to read adult stories with these comic book people. There was a certain portion of the audience, but I think that got adjusted, and then thankfully I think it's followed through, and we really are experiencing the people of color and of other orientations that are, it's like, yeah, we're normal too. we have normal conversations, and we could be super people as well, and I think it's fantastic. It's great to kind of see that these final like kind of barriers are starting to come down.
No, and I hope they continue. You only have to go to a convention and see how excited people are to dress up like Kamala Khan to see that, you know, that good work is being done, you know, and I think that I really do hope it continues. You know, I think that this, you know, the fact is that we don't all have to be exactly the same, but we're alike in the ways that matter. And I think, you know, I hope people read, you know, we're getting all sort of high and off comics now, but I just, you know, that's what I think we're here to do. You know, there's always a place for low calorie media, certainly. I mean, I watch Ash vs. Evil Dead every weekend. Although it's not really low calorie, because the casting in Ash vs. Evil Dead is actually very progressive, despite the fact that there's a scene where he gets pulled to a corpse's ass. But, you know, at the same time, as long as these are the things, that even something like that, I think is important, because you never know what is gonna show someone that they matter, and that's what fiction is for. You know, like, me being young, nerdy, and Jewish was very excited to see Jeff Goldblum be the star of Independence Day along with Will Smith.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
And I was very excited. And now I'm very excited to see him even in Independence Day 2, because I'm like, oh, maybe when I'm old I can still be nerdy and Jewish, you know? So,
was it good? I still haven't seen it. Was it good?
Was it good? No, movie terrible. But
right.
It's good that he's in it.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah, well, yeah, one of the saving graces was that he was in it. Sure, I would think.
I mean, let's be clear. That's a whole other topic and a whole other podcast. But I don't even live in New York, and I was considering getting an apartment in New York when he was selling them. So for apartments.com. So
that's,
I mean,
you're killing.
He has a strange power over me.
Well, but honestly, it is kind of about comics, as you said, because, or to disagree slightly, because, you know, there is this kind of weird pushback that's been happening since those Hugo Awards a year or two ago, and there is this portion of the pop culture audience that kind of is demanding to be heard, and really having some barriers of where they think stories should go and shouldn't go, more importantly. And that's why it's like, I don't understand. I mean, as you say, not every book should be for everyone, but I am interested in terms of, you know, the people that, whether unfortunately or are like, fine, bring it on, in terms of if they're getting any sort of pushback. And I am interested. Have you kind of had any pushback on your books from this kind of newly vocal, you know, segment of pop culture people who don't like to see the progression that's been going on?
Honestly, not as many as you would think. And I expected some. You know, when Midnighter came out, I was kind of hoping for my second Westboro Baptist Church picket of my life. We got picketed in college, and I was hoping for one more, maybe 1 million moms. Like, I was ready to go.
Sure, man.
But we didn't get it. So, which, you know, to be frank, it'd either be it's a sign of the times or the fact that no one's reading the book. But, you know, you like to think it's a sign of the times. But it does happen. I mean, you only have to look at, you know, what went on with Chelsea Kane a couple weeks ago on Mockingbird to see that it does happen. And the answer to that is maybe grim, but despite the fact that I'm bisexual, I'm still a white guy, and so I'm not potentially not the first person people go after with these things, which is I wish weren't true. But no, I haven't seen a ton of pushback, and if there has been, I mean, fuck them. There's nothing else to say. I know that's kind of brusque, but I don't. There are literally thousands and thousands and thousands of books for those people that I'm not here to take away.
Yeah,
and none of us are.
No.
But other people deserve those books too. So, I've been very lucky to not have to deal with a ton of it. I had some guy today ask me if I was going to put Donald Trump in the JLA, and I was like, all right, come on now. But, it has been, I've been very lucky to avoid those things. It's shocking to me how the internet has emboldened people who seemingly spend their entire day trying to ruin the days of other people. I've been, after the JLA announcement, I was tagged in multiple conversations, not directed at me, but, thanking me for things that I had apparently done to hurt readers, and, no matter how much I shot them down, because of the roster, I mean. And, you would see that they would get blocked, and they would make new accounts every day to go after these people. And it's like, what do they do with their day? And that brings me down. I would gladly see a comics industry where people don't base their whole day around tearing down another comics fan because they don't agree about the JLA roster, and harassing people who are just standing up for, things that they believe in. There's people that have really passionate ideas about comic characters, obviously, and everyone should be free to express that. So, no, I haven't personally encountered a lot of it, but I have seen a lot of it.
Sure.
And it brings me down because, again, like, if you stand up for something you believe in, say like the controversy is not a controversy, but say there's characters you really want on a team or something like that, you have every right to believe that and fight for that, because those characters are important to you, and no one should get in the way of that, especially in comics, which, God, this was an outsider medium, and it still is. Like, this was in the 50s, Superman was created by Jewish immigrants angry at the power structure.
Yep.
When the 30s, that should have been what I said, I apologize. In the 60s, I mean, it was Peter Parker's a nerd like me, and he can't make rent, and he can't get the girl, and now it's Barbara Gordon, now it's Kamala Khan.
Yep.
So if you have these things that you're passionate about and characters you love, like, you should be able to love them, and that brings me down, but I haven't faced a lot of it personally myself, and my hope is that it goes away. I don't know what the answer is for that. If I did, I would probably no longer need to work in comics, but when I see it, it does make me sad. Like, you just should be free to express your opinions about a character, whether I agree with them, whether whoever doesn't agree with them. Like, comics belong to everyone, so that type of stuff does get me a little riled up.
I hear you, man, and honestly, I appreciate you talking about it, because it is in the air. It has only been a week or so since the Chelsea Kane nonsense about that and Mockingbird. And the good news is, I really do think it, as you said, as these things are presented through art as normal, and also when people in a life experience see how normal it is and people are just people, I do think it goes away. And I do think that there is hope for the younger generations that are kids now that don't grow up with those kinds of stigmas and frustrations, and also the being, the unfortunately on the other side of the argument where, they feel like it should only be one kind of world and not a very accepting group. I really think that those generations are dying out. And again, I think this is when art needs to respond and show the normalcy. I mean, God, my favorite Deep Space Nine episode, Star Trek, when they kind of give the homage to the 50s pulp science fiction stuff. And there's Benny Russell, Avery Brooks's character from the 50s, just writing about a guy being on a space station and happens to be black and everything, and that it's normal, and the things that he has to push against. I mean, it's those are based on real kind of things, and I think again each community is kind of facing it, and the dominoes are falling, and I think in the right way. So I think it is getting better.
And the other thing I'd say about the Chelsea Kane thing, I don't know Chelsea at all, but I don't have to completely disown and detest the people that would drive her away from comics. Like, I just don't. I have a strong well of pity for those people because, how are you in such a place where the mere existence of a character wearing a shirt with the word feminism on it is so threatening to you that you have to organize these campaigns? Like, it's a detestable moment, and I'm not meaning to get too serious about that, but it truly saddens me when people push other creators and other fans out of comics because it's so antithetical to what comics are about and what fiction is about. I posted a thing when this was happening about how comics is a medium that saves lives. And some douchebag was like, "Oh, could you be any more pretentious?" And I said, "Well, yes, absolutely." But the fact is like, yeah, cool, bro. Like, you can say that, but I've been on panels and I've been in discussions, and I hear people talk about, the moments. It's everything we've been talking about tonight, John. Like, I hear people talk about the moments where, they read a story and realized that it felt like someone understands them when they thought that no one else did.
Yep.
So, that's what we're, and it changed their perception, and so, like, that's what we're here for. I mean, we're here to tell exciting stories, but we're here to do more than that, too. So, anytime I see shit like that, I just, man, like, those readers have no place in comics because everybody has a place in comics. So if you don't understand that, then I guess maybe not everybody, because maybe not you. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Absolutely. No, I do know what you mean, man, because I've been in the audience for those panels, and I do understand. And even just that convention vibe, and certainly, again, when you discover other people like what you like, and it's suddenly like, oh, I'm not the only person. I'm really not alone. And I think, and that's why I agreed with a couple of the creators when Chelsea Kane's thing came up and said, it's not comics. It's just a few assholes that are just being loud. And it's like, no, it really, I mean, and the brushback was, no, it is. A lot of people have faced this. And it's like, no, we understand, and I agree, and it's horrible that this happens. But the point is, no, the general message is, we all like this stuff. You're not alone. Welcome to the club. Sit down. And enjoy what we're all enjoying. And we can even disagree and say, fine, if you don't like that, then there's plenty of books to read. Go over there and just don't, shit on everyone else's good time. Because honestly, I think that is the message that especially this current generation of creators and publishers are really trying to get out there. And that's why. And I really do think ultimately, again, loud assholes, that's the way the internet works. But the good news is there's pushback by people who understand the bigger issue and say, no, they're wrong. And we all kind of stand up. And I mean, because I certainly gave my 2 cents on Chelsea's behalf. I don't know her either. It only made me want to read, because I wasn't reading Mockingbird, and I read all 8 issues at the end. I'm like, Jesus, she's great. I want to read more comics by this woman. Fantastic. Keep going. She's funny. They're great stories, man. And I mean, that's the important thing. So no, I honestly appreciate what might seem like a sidetrack, but I do kind of think it's on everyone's mind because of what's happened in the last couple of weeks. So there you go.
No, certainly. Well, we're going to keep, and it is going to keep getting better, as you said. That's the final note on that topic.
There you go, man. Excellent.
It is going to keep getting better because we're all going to keep working, and we're not stopping.
Right, you guys aren't going. No, everyone's not going away. Exactly. Sorry for those loud people who might disagree. We're not going away. So that's awesome, man. Very cool. Well, listen, honestly, I think you're off to a great start with Namesake. Like I said, I think it's got a great adventure bent to it, good action, and I think really neat characterization. And again, coming at it from a different point of view, which is, I think, excellent. And same for Supergirl, man. I really think you're breathing great life into her. And it's I've been saying this about a lot of the DC Rebirth stuff. It's like, oh, there they are. There's those characters, and this is what made them great. And I really think, I mean, were you given any note as far as like Supergirl in terms of, or was, coming from you, this is what I want to do?
Well, there's certainly a conversation to be had. I mean, but with any work for hire project, to be clear, like I don't want to say like, oh, I just only got notes on Supergirl. With any work for hire project, a book is always a conversation between the property holder and what you want to do as a creator. So, I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, honestly, of course, I got notes on Supergirl and all these things, but that's part of the process because you have. We're there as a team to actualize the best version of that character. So there should be notes and there should be a discussion to make sure that we're getting to the core that everybody knows is what that character is about. And whether it's Supergirl, whether it's Midnighter and Apollo, whether it's the characters in the Justice League of America, whether it's Bulk and Skull, man, like these things, that's the process. Because that conversation is what leads to that holistic version of the character that reminds people why they love them.
Very cool. Excellent. We haven't really talked about Justice League at all. What can you tell me about Justice League of America right now?
No, not much.
I can't. I'll confess I haven't been able to read everything. So
well, there's nothing out. So
that's okay. Excuse me. I am now seeing the headline. You're taking over in December.
I'm launching Justice League of America in February. Actually.
Oh, excuse me.
So do not worry. There's nothing to have missed because it's not out yet.
Okay. Can I ask it? Because you mentioned the roster and everything, and have you put the roster out there?
Yeah, no, that's public. The roster is Batman, Ryan Troy as the Atom, Vixen, Lobo, Black Canary, Killer Frost, and the Ray. Ray
Okay.
Charles.
All right. I do remember seeing this headline. Dude, you know how this is. The million headlines like pass by and stuff like that. And I was so focused on your current books, I forgot that it was your name that was attached to that team. So I can see some people...
Well, that's because unlike me, you don't have a Google alert set up for my name. So
no, I can understand some just, I guess people want their meat and potatoes, man, when it comes to certain books. So I can see a slight frustration over like, really, that lineup, why, and everything. So yeah, I mean, I'm cool with it, but yet I'm interested in seeing how Lobo obviously plays on the Justice League and stuff. Great to see Vixen back.
Yeah.
Ryan Troy,
I think it's exciting. It's an exciting roster, and also, I mean, it's the sister book to Justice League. So the Big Seven, that book exists and will continue to exist. But I think it's funny, we have, yes, honestly, I think one of the most diverse rosters the Justice League of America has had in a long time. But at the same time, there's a lot of characters that have a legacy with the Justice League out there, which is also exciting to me. I mean, Vixen was in the Detroit era.
Yep.
Adam was in the Gardner Fox era. Obviously, Black Canary, circa Wade and Kitson, was actually one of the founders of the Justice League.
That's true.
So there's a lot of things I find super. Actually, the Ray was in the Justice League right before either in the mid-'90s or right before Morrison took over in '97.
I didn't remember that. That's fantastic. Okay.
So I think that there's and the book is a lot about celebrating all those things, and you'll see more as it comes out. And we have 4 one-shots in January that set up some of the lesser-known characters. So we have 4 Rebirth one-shots in January with the Atom, with Vixen, with Killer Frost, and with the Ray. And I think that'll set the table very nicely. Being an 80s and 90s comic guy, I couldn't be more excited for the Ray to come back and still have his awesome-ass jacket, which has aged beautifully since the 1990s. But I think it'll be good. I mean, Justice League of America is going to do stuff and go places in the DCU that I think you haven't seen in a long time. I've pretty well established myself as someone who will pull some pretty minute details out of the DC universe. I'm well known for pitching characters to my editors that they don't know DC owns.
Excellent. That's great.
I fought real hard during Batman and Robin Eternal Summit to get Gossip Gertie into continuity, and I did not win that fight.
See, I'm 50, man. I remember these guys. Okay, and women. Go on. That's excellent, man.
Well, Gossip Gertie. is it's Bob Kane's wife. She's from the movies. She's in Batman Forever.
Right.
And Batman and Robin, the movie.
Yes.
And it's literally Bob Kane's wife. It's not a character based off of Bob Kane's wife, like Bob Kane's wife played.
She played Gossip Gertie. That's fantastic. That's awesome, man.
But anyway, so there'll be a lot of really, really fun stuff explored in Justice League of America. And Ivan Reyes is doing the initial arc, and we'll be announcing a lot more. It's a double ship, so obviously we'll have more than one artist working on it. But we'll be announcing them soon, and I couldn't be more excited, man. Like JLA, JLA 97 was the first book I bought that was a modern comic during what became my sustained period of reading comics. Like I picked up a lot of flea market stuff in the 80s. The first book I ever bought actually was West Coast Avengers 16, A Tale of Two Kitties.
Hilarious.
And then I got a lot of now this will explain all my comics. And then I almost got back in 1992, buying the Clone Saga at Walden Books, because we didn't have a comic store by me. And then it was the Clone Saga, so obviously I got out for a couple of years because goddamn.
We all got out for a couple of years.
I know. And then there was an article in the Syracuse New Times about Superman getting new electric blue costume and electricity powers that, of course, are going to be his new powers forever. So I was like, shit, I need to get back in and see what's going on here. And that's when I picked up JLA. My first issue that I bought was actually part 2 of Rock of Ages, which I still have.
Oh, fantastic. Great storyline. Tremendous.
So I'm to be writing JLA now is pretty surreal, but I aspire to blow things up real good, just like Grant and Howard did. Since I kind of owe my career to them blowing things up.
So will this be your first double shipping book, or has Supergirl? It's 3 issues I know so far, but I wasn't sure if it was
Supergirl's monthly. Ongoing, yes.
Okay.
I technically did a semi-weekly, actually, for a month, because I wrote all 6 issues of the Night of the Monster Men crossover that took place September and October. So, and that was 6 issues over 4 weeks. So that was a fair amount of work. But yes, this will be my first ongoing double ship book.
Well, and I assume you obviously got some scripts in the bank already and stuff, but how is it balancing that with the other books that you're doing?
It's a lot of work, but between creator owned and the books I'm doing at DC that you know about and the books I'm doing that you don't know about, I'm basically doing a script a week forever and sometimes more. So the workload doesn't change as much as it's just about scheduling it, because I can't humanly do more than 1 script a week.
Sure.
It's just a question of which one I do on each week and making sure all the books get serviced. That's not ideal, but at the same time, there's so many characters I love in the DC universe that it's hard to turn away. I still haven't written Martian Manhunter, who's my favorite character in comics ever.
How come no room for him in Justice League of America then?
Well, maybe there's other plans, man. Stay tuned.
Very good. All right. By the way, I really liked Rob Williams' Martian Manhunter.
I was so jealous when I met him, and I found out that's what he was doing. If I could have killed him and gotten away with it, I probably would have. But the book came out. That was the beginning of a beautiful friendship between myself and Rob Williams, where he, living in the UK, is constantly shocked at the insane stories that come out of the state of Florida that I send him every week. And the book, his Martian Manhunter, was really, really fun.
Yeah, man. What's your favorite Manhunter run? I bet I know. I'm going to guess. Can I guess? I was going to guess the Ostrander and, was it Tom Mandrake?
Yes, because Ostrander and Mandrake in general are one of my favorite creative teams ever, and I think The Spectre is one of the best books DC's ever published.
Could not agree more. Absolutely.
That doesn't get the attention it deserves. And I love Tom and John's run on Manhunter. It's funny because I didn't know that much about comics back then. So, like, let's list the people that did fill-ins on that book that I was like, God damn it, who the fuck are these people? Including Brian Hitch, Eduardo Barreto, people who now I'm like, oh my God.
Yes.
But at the time, I was like, bring me Tom Mandrake. And Tom is a close friend, and I love his working with Tom. It's just funny that I was like, Brian Hitch, get out of here, man. Like,
good Tom back there. Absolutely, man.
And actually, that might be one of my favorite issues of Martian Manhunter. There's whatever issue John did with Hitch is set in the 1 million timeline where John has become the entire planet Mars, and it's basically Rashomon about Martian Manhunter with 3 different aliens. And it's a really cool issue if you've either read it or you haven't read it.
No, I hadn't read it. I kind of missed all the 1 million issues. That's when I was checked out and hadn't.
Well, this is the thing. Like, it's not the actual 1 million issue. They went back to that timeline later just for this thing. It's cool. I mean, like, you'll find it. The whole thing is basically like it's these 3 aliens get caught in a cave during a sandstorm. They all tell. I mean, it's so much like, like I said, it is Rashomon. They all tell their story about Martian Manhunter, and they say, oh, well, your story could never be true. This is what he's like. And obviously, it's all very different because they all have different views of what strength is. It's a really tight issue.
Cool.
To check out. But, yeah, John is one of my favorites. It's kind of Nirvana right now that we can watch Supergirl and see him on screen talking to Superman and Supergirl like it's nothing.
Could not agree more.
It's a big jump from the days where I was just being satisfied by David Ogden Steers playing him on a VHS tape that I bought at a flea market.
That movie, absolutely. Oh, I know. Poor John. Too many Oreos in that version of the movie. He's a little too portly to be Martian.
On that note, another guy that I poo-pooed, and now I'm an idiot for poo-pooing in the Martian Manhunter run, one shot by Doug Mahnke and John Ostrander in Martian Manhunter about his obsession with Oreos. So anyway, but going back to look at that run, it's crazy the talent that worked on that book. In addition to Tom and John, who I think are, as I said, one of the best teams that have ever come together to make comics. So.
Have you had a chance to talk to Ostrander much?
Yeah. Well, I met John for the first time at the Suicide Squad after party, and and actually helped to get him through to meet Viola Davis because I was like, this guy created
exactly.
Amanda Waller, maybe you should let him through.
I love John because he's such a quiet guy, and yeah, I've had similar experiences introducing him to creators. It's like, oh, I don't know if you'd want to meet me. It's like, John, everybody loves you. Everyone thinks you are one of their guys. I'm like, this current generation of writers, they all read your stuff, man, and you were doing really great stuff at a time when there was a lot of good stuff and a lot of crap too. And I said, you're like one of the hidden gems, man. I absolutely.
Well, I just can't, the industry has changed, right? And
sure.
The fact that he got they got close to 60 issues. I forget exactly how many issues are in Spectre, but 60 round issues to do that book. And like the last issue, after all that time, is mostly just him sitting over that snowy field as like the snow blows away and all the skulls slowly become visible. Like, that's a beautiful issue. And I wonder if you could get that out today, or it would be too subtle, or, the build would be too slow. But that book is really, really special. And obviously it comes from the fact that John has, a past with the church and things like that, and his own sort of wrestling with things like that. But it's a really special book. I can't say enough about it. If there was an omnibus, I would be holding it right now.
I couldn't agree more. And, you could say the same thing about a lot of the books that he wrote in the 80s and early 90s in particular, too. I mean, he was he's amazing. And then, of course, goes to Dark Horse and writes really great Star Wars stuff, too. So, no, John's pretty amazing. That's awesome, man. Very cool. Dude, I really appreciate the time. I don't want to keep you longer because you're an hour ahead of me, and I don't want to mess up your entire evening. But thank you. I love Namesake. I think it's a great first issue, and I encourage people to check it out from Boom. And I think people are anticipating your Justice League of America. And Supergirl and Midnighter and Apollo are excellent. I like what I'm reading, sir. Keep it up.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
That's Steve Orlando. Check out Namesake from Boom Comics. It came out last Wednesday. And, of course, Supergirl continues and is great. Namesake is fantastic. I absolutely recommend you check it out. And good first issue, and I think it gives a good setup and will give you what you're looking for in terms of, all right, what's this book all about and stuff. I think it delivers on that first issue quite well. And Midnighter and Apollo, of course. And then coming up in January, Justice League of America, and it sounds like Steve's got some other stuff in the works from DC and probably some other creator-owned stuff. So I look forward to our next conversation. Good guy. We spent another half hour or so talking boxing and a few other of my favorite pastimes, and it's nice to hear that that's another guy that is into some of those sports. I'm excited. I don't know if you guys know, but if you're at all interested in boxing and haven't been paying attention to the sport, there was a lot of promise with the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight that didn't come through. There's a great matchup on Saturday night, and it is a pay-per-view fight. But literally, this is the best matchup in boxing. Sergey Kovalev and Andre Ward for the light heavyweight title. Both guys are amazing. Andre Ward was in Creed and is the California fighter that knocks Baby Creed on his ass. And I guess that might be a spoiler if you haven't already seen the movie. But if you haven't, then you probably weren't going to see the movie. But he's in the early part of Creed, Andre Ward. And great fighter, great middleweight, has been a very outstanding light heavyweight as well. Sergey Kovalev is absolutely for real, an incredible fighter, great range, great chin, amazing punching power. Both guys have great punching power. Both guys know how to punch in combinations. And they're both in their prime, unlike Pacquiao Mayweather, where clearly Pacquiao was probably a year or two, or if not 3 or 4, past his prime. It's great that this match happened. I urge you, if you're a fight fan at all, to probably check this out. I don't even know who's going to win. I can't predict a winner. But I'm really excited about this fight, and it's coming up this Saturday as we're speaking, the 19th. So anyway, great to talk to Steve, and I hope he does come back. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Word Balloon, and I hope you took my comments about what's going on right now in stride. Believe me, back to fun. Next episode, I was the same way when I was listening to podcasts this week. It's like, man, everybody almost feels obligated to talk about what happened with the presidential election. But again, I really do feel like it reflects what's been going on in comics. And that's not going to go away because I do find it, A, interesting, and B, it's important to remember that this should be for everybody. And I'm a big believer in that. And I know you are too. So no matter where you are on the political spectrum, I really do. I think, my Word Balloon listeners feel the same way that I do. So, preach it to the choir. In any case, Word Balloon was brought to you by In Stock Trades at InStockTrades.com. Lots of great new books are out from In Stock Trades. They even have, how about this? There's an Archie trade paperback out from Dark Horse. It's the Archie Archives, Double Date and Other Stories. It's a trade paperback, and man, this is some of the fun stuff from the 40s of Archie. When Harry Sale was the Archie writer and artist. 42% off. It's just $11.49. You can get the War of Kings omnibus, which laid a lot of groundwork for the Guardians of the Galaxy, and also, of course, had the Inhumans in there, and the Nova Corps, and everybody. Very, very interesting stuff. And we talked to Andy Schmidt about War of Kings, because he was the editor of that. There's now a War of Kings omnibus hardcover, 42% off. It's just $72.50. Lots of great Marvel Cosmic in that collection. You can also get the Marvel Masterworks Doctor Strange Volume 7. And where's Volume 7 have? This is when Roger Stern was writing Doctor Strange. Man, Roger Stern, and I know I haven't had him yet on Word Balloon. It'll happen. And I really want it to happen. How vastly underrated is that guy? Everything he wrote, really. So much good stuff. But this Doctor Strange masterwork includes the Return of the Ancient One. So if you're sad about what happened in the movie, you can pick that right up and enjoy these issues from issue 23 to issue 37. It's Roger Stern, Tom Sutton, Jim Starlin, Ralph Macchio editing. And really good stuff. This is 50% off, just $37.50. You can get, how about this reboot of Sugar and Spike, Metahuman Investigations. Keith Giffen has put the new spin on Sugar and Spike, not the sweet little mop tops they used to be. And this collection is 42% off. It's just $8.69. You can also get the Sandman Overture trade paperback. J.H. Williams on art. Of course, Neil Gaiman, the writer. This is pretty neat stuff, and it collects the entire miniseries plus bonus material. 42% off, just $11.59. All from InStockTrades.com. Check it out for yourself. Great deals are waiting for you at InStockTrades.com. Thanks again for listening to today's Word Balloon. I'm sorry. I meant, as I said, there's another episode in just a couple days. Well, it's been a couple days, but it was a lot longer than I expected. I was hoping to get it out by the end of last week, and here I am Monday night cranking this episode out. But fear not. More great episodes are coming up this month in November, and certainly in December. 7 weeks left in the year, and we're going to go out guns blazing. Lots of great conversation. New people, returning people, classic guests. Hopefully a couple interesting little things. I got to get the clearance from the creators, and if it happens, we're going to do a couple Time Warp episodes of some unreleased material that I think you'll find fascinating and I thought would be fitting for the end of the year. 2016, man. Oof. Did you see John Oliver? He had a very funny bit at the end of the show. Fuck 2016. And I say that as someone that was very happy that the Cubs won. It figures, you always say when hell freezes over, the Cubs are going to win the World Series. Man, it's been that kind of year. Leonard Cohen passing away. Just so sad, man. Well, don't worry. At least you got good entertainment coming from Word Balloon. I promise you that in the days and weeks ahead. And hopefully a little timey-wimey thing going back 10 years that if I get the clearance, I think you guys are really going to enjoy. Have a great couple days until the next episode. And thanks a lot for listening. More fun coming along the way. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions. Copyright Fuck 2016.